Welcome back to our Excel labs. We're now in topic 9 and we're going to look at pivot tables. Now you may remember from topic 2 when I first discussed pivot tables, when we were actually looking at databases and tables within Excel. First of all, to follow along, you need to open the file that I have given to you under topic 9 called bank accounts, or SMM198 topic 9 bank accounts. So this is a set of sheets which I have downloaded from the Wolkenbach website, so you can re-download it yourselves if you prefer. I have made very few modifications here and there. By and large it is the same information. On the very first sheet called data, you have exactly that. It's a database of accounts which have been opened at several branches of a particular bank. You will recognize that in the columns we have the field names, date, weekday, amount, and so forth. And in the rows we have the individual records, all these individual accounts. And in the next few questions, from Q1 to Q8, we're going to try to extract some bits of information, or we're going to reformulate the data in a way that it is a bit more meaningful. Now, if you need to start a pivot table, you don't need to specify a range as an Excel table. You can start with any kind of sort of data, and Excel will try, and in most cases will succeed in auto-identifying this range. But let's say that you have specified a range as an Excel table. You will recognize straight away that there is an additional tab on your ribbon, right? And this tab is called Table Tools, and under that you have Design. So if you click on this Design tab, there is already a button that is called Summarize with Pivot Table. So this gives you an easier start, if you like. However, you can also go to the Insert tab, and the very first button there, the very first command is Pivot Table. So this means that you simply put your cell in an area where your data lies. You don't have to highlight the area yet, and then insert pivot table. Now, to make this instruction video a little bit easier, I'm actually using the fact that Excel has automatically named this table of data as table 1, as you see there, as I drop down this name range button. So if I were to click on that, that area would actually be highlighted. There we are. So you can see my entire table being highlighted. So what I will do, I will start working my way through the individual questions. Here we are in question 1 on the first sheet, and the question is, what is the daily total new deposit amount for each branch? So the information we require is hidden inside the question. So first of all, we want daily records every single day, total new deposit. So we're looking for sums of deposits, and we want to classify this by branch. So the branch is the other important information. So we cross-tabulate. So how do we start a pivot table? Go to the Insert tab, hit on Pivot Table. We need to select a table or range. We can go back and highlight it, but in our case I'll simply type in Table 1 because I know that this range already exists. I'm going to place my pivot table in the existing worksheet because it is already set up this way, it is empty, but you could always put it in a new worksheet. And then I click OK. So what I get is an empty area. By the way, you cannot delete any individual sheet in this area. You have to highlight the entire area in order to delete anything. And this area, depending on what information Excel returns, will expand and contract automatically. So it will start from cell A4, but it will go further to the right and further down if it is necessary. Now, more importantly, right on the right hand side of your sheet, you will see a little pane that has popped up called Pivot Table Fields. And you see several other buttons. So you are now in the Pivot Table Tools. You have two little tabs under that, Analyze and Design. So we're not going to deal too much with the design part, but you can format your pivot table so it looks nicer perhaps. You can do things like add subtotals or grand totals, whether you have categories, etc. You can have banded rows or banded columns. at the least you're going to have row headers and column headers. So I'm not going to deal too much with formatting. You can experiment with this yourself. So I'm going to stay on the Analyze tab, and mostly I'm going to work with this area here, with this pane. So what do we want to do then? We want to fill at least 2 areas. If you look at these areas below the 4 areas, the one that definitely has to have some information in it is the values. You see the little sigma? The Greek sigma means that you're doing calculations. You may calculate the total of a value, it can be averages, it can be a number of different things, or you can simply count values. Now, because we have values here, because we have accounts that have numbers in them, by default what Excel will calculate is actually sums of these values. And then you need to have at least one more area, either rows or columns, depending on what you want to put in this data. So first of all, what are we going to sum up in terms of values? Well, we're going to sum up the amount we have in each account. So if you tick that, what you get there is not quite what you expected. All right, so actually what it has done here, it has collected together all the amounts and put them in ranges. This is something very useful, but we're going to look at it in one of the other questions. So I'm deselecting that, and instead I click and drag this field, and I'm putting it down here where it says values. Now, all it has done, it has counted the amount, which means there are 712 accounts. Okay, it's a count. We may want to do this, actually we definitely want to do this into a summation. So I click on the little arrow here pointing down, I get a pop-up menu, and I'm going to click on value field settings. And in this value field settings, we don't want count, we want sum. And you also get an idea of what else you can calculate with the values in the individual record. You could calculate the average, the maximum, minimum, product, and a few other things. I click on OK. So what you see here is the total value of this account, which comes to 6.6 million. But you don't just want to see the value, you want to classify it. So the first classification is according to date. So you can either tick on date and it will automatically place it into the rows area, or in the same way you can click and drag and put it in the rows area. So what do you get here? You get all the available dates. Notice that not everything is available. You do have all the dates being in the month of April, starting with the 1st and then going to the 2nd and then jumping to the 4th, the 5th, the 6th, 7th, 8th. Here probably you have a weekend because it jumps onto the 11th and so forth. So you have up to the 30th of April. So what you get here is the sum of amounts contained in the accounts that were opened on each day. So this is one form of classification, but we want the daily total new deposit amount for each branch. So the other field we need is the branch. So here is the branch, here's the field. Now if you tick on that, it will put it automatically into the row label again. So this time what it will do, as you will see, which again, that might be some information that you would like to see displayed this way. You get the date first, and then under each date you get whatever is the sum of the new accounts which have opened in each branch. So you see Central, North County, West Side, the branches are listed alphabetically. If you go further down, and they are alphabetically because here they happen to be in decreasing sums, but further down you see the order is not kept. We don't want things to be displayed like that. We want the branch names to be displayed in columns. We'll do this in a minute. First of all, what you could do is you could change the order. So if I click and drag and you put it above the date, look at that now. You see everything in the central branch, which you can contract or expand, and then under central all the dates and the sums of the new accounts in each date. Again, we don't want this either. So what I will do is I will grab the branch here and just move it into the columns area. And this is a bit closer to what we are actually, it's precisely what we want to extract. Each day, what is the sum of the total new deposits for each branch? So it shows you on a daily basis each individual branch, and each day it shows you the grand total as well. And then if you go down the column, it actually sums up the grand total for each individual branch. Whether you want the grand totals or not, you can control by going to design. Okay, so you can select whether you want the grand totals completely off, whether you want it on for rows and columns, which is exactly what we get now, whether you want it only for rows or only for columns. So right now we're going to leave it as it is. We don't want to do anything with that. Going back to analyze. And this is our very first question, our very first query using a pivot table. In the second question, what we have here is which day of the week accounts for the most deposits. So what's important here is the day of the week, Monday to Friday, rather than the actual date. And then it is a simple summation of all the account amounts which have been opened on the specific day of the week. So once again, what we do is we're going to insert a pivot table, go to the Insert tab and click on Pivot Table. Our table is the same, called Table 1, and we're going to put it in the existing worksheet. And then click on OK. So again, you have your range here. So this time we need the weekday, and the weekday is going to be in the rows. So straight away you have a listing of Monday to Saturday. Actually, there are Saturday accounts too. And then once again we need the amount in the value section. And once again we are given the count, so we need to change that and make it into the sum. So this is what we actually need to see. So this is the sum of amounts for all the accounts that have been opened in any branch on a Monday. Now, in the worked out solutions to this, in the file that you actually have, you will notice that there are little bars there. So this is fairly easy to replicate. First of all, let me make the column a bit wider. So this is nothing more than conditional formatting, which you already have. So go back to your home, ribbon, the home tab of the ribbon, highlight these numbers. So you only need the Monday to Saturday, then go to conditional formatting, and it's nothing more than the data bars, and I believe it is solid filled. So this is more or less what you get. I believe there is a slightly different format in the solutions that you get. I think this is fixed by going to conditional formatting and manage the rules now, so you can edit them. So that's the data bar. So let's edit the rule, and what you need to do here is in the type, the minimum and the maximum, select a number, and for the maximum also select a number, and the value that you give to that is probably I would say possibly 2 million. That should do the trick. And click on OK, and OK again to apply the rule, and there you have it. Perhaps you can make it a little bit smaller. You can make it into 3 million or 4 million, and then this bar is going to be shorter. As a matter of fact, if I try to do it again by managing the rules and then editing the rule and then just changing the number into perhaps 4 million, click on OK, click on apply, there you are. Okay, so if you increase the scale, then the bar is going to be shorter, and then you have some clear space between the bar and the actual number. So you can play a little bit with the scale in order to achieve the formatting you require. But at the center of it is nothing more than this pivot table, whereby the weekday is in your rows and the amount, the sum of amount rather than the count of amount, is in your values. On the third sheet, the question is how many accounts were opened at each branch, broken down by account type. So it's a fairly straightforward question, this one. We simply want to classify everything by branch, then by account, and then just count the accounts rather than sum up the sums under it. So once again, insert, pivot table, the range is table 1, and we insert it in the existing worksheet. And now we need to pick the branch, put it on the rows, then pick the account type, put it on the columns, so immediately you see the data that we get. And finally pick up the you can take the amount if you like, which makes sense, and you're happy to just show the count of amount rather than the sum under each individual account type. And again, you have the grand totals displayed in the last column as well as the last row. Question number 4 is, what is the dollar distribution of the different account types? So this needs a little bit of explanation. So effectively what we need is all the different sums which are deposited in the accounts. How many accounts have between, say, $1 to $1,000 and $1,001 to $2,000, etc., etc. Now, to do this, once again, we go to the Insert tab and in the very familiar way, type in the range for our table and click OK. So the pivot table is inserted. Now, funnily enough, we actually use the same field for the calculations here. The first one, the one field that we use is amount. So drag this one under rows. Now you see what happens automatically. Excel will take the data, read the data, and automatically create bins, as we say, to calculate frequency distribution. It takes the minimum amount, the maximum amount, and it goes from 1 to 5,000, 5,001 to 10,000, and so on and so forth until 90,000 by looking at the maximum amount that you have there. We'll see how you can change this if you need to change it. And the next thing we need to do is take again the amount field, but this time put it under values. And you know that automatically it is going to give us a count of amount, i.e. how many accounts are between 1 and 5,000, 5,001 and $10,000 and so forth. And we can stop there. But sometimes if you need a distribution, you also need to express these frequencies as a percentage of the total. So what is 253 divided by 712? And of course you can add a formula by yourself and just take the cell B5 and divide it by B18 and then copy down for all the remaining cells. But you can have Excel do that for you. So what you can do is grab the amount field and drop it under values once again. So this is the second time we have count of amount. You can go back and change the field name if you like, but I don't care too much about that. We can change that into being a percentage. But what you want to do is to change the way that this is displayed, and there are two ways to do that. Go to the second amount field, click on the drop down, select value field settings. And this time, first of all, from here, you can change the name into percentage of total, and then click on that second tab called show values as. So normally you see there is no calculation involved, but you can change this to saying percentage of column total. So click on OK. So you know now that these 253 accounts represent 35.53% of the total. If you want to do it in a different way, what you could do is the easiest thing is to actually remove this field and go back and add it again. And this time, rather than clicking and then going to value field settings, I go on the column there, somewhere in that particular column, and right click. So if you right click, as you see, you have here the value field settings. You can change that. You can click on that and you get the same little pop-up window. Fine. Or you can right click and select straight away show value as, and this is a drop list of available formats, so select percentage of column total, and there you are. You have exactly the same result. And then if you want, you can go back here and change the name of the field as well. Question number 5 asks, what type of account do tellers open most often? And this implies, or suggests rather, that we're going to filter the data down to the accounts which are opened by tellers. So we start once again by inserting a pivot table. The range is table 1. And then we need this time to drag down the account type into the rows area, the amount field into the values area, so it will do a simple count, but we also need to drag the open by field under filters. So you see here a new line has been inserted at the top, which allows us to filter down to teller. Click OK. So what you see here is the count of amount. We can rename this to accounts. You will notice in the worked out solution that this column, these data, are ordered. They are ordered in reverse numerical order. So you can do this by clicking somewhere at the top, or in fact anywhere in this column, right click and then select sort, and simply select largest to smallest. So there we are. And then you will also notice that there is a second field which does what we did in our previous question, which simply gives the same distribution but as a percentage of the total. So to do this, remember, we need to drag the amount under the sigma values, and then you can simply click anywhere in that column, anywhere, as long as it's in column C, right click, and then we can show values as percentage of the column total, and then change that to call it percent, which is what you see in the actual worked out example. So this is the way to figure out question 5. Question 6 asks, in which branch do tellers open the most checking accounts for new customers? So here the main question is, in which branch do we have the most checking accounts, the most of a particular type of account? And we see we have a number of multiple filters. First of all, the accounts must be opened by tellers. Then they have to be checking accounts, and these accounts have to be for new customers. So we have here 3 filters, 3 criteria. So let's once again insert a pivot table. The range is table 1 as always. This time what we're going to do is drag the branch field into rows. We drag the account apologies, we're going to drag the amount into values, so this is going to give us a count. So now these are all the accounts in each individual branch, in each of the 3 branches. But now we need to start filtering. So we need to get the account type down here, and we're going to set it in a minute. We need to drag the field open by in order to see who is opening it, whether it's the tellers or the new accounts department. And then we also need to bring in the type of customer, so drag the customer field under filters as well. So all we have to do now is use this drop downs in order to filter everything. So for account type we require checking. So you see now the result starts narrowing down. Opened by whom? Tellers. And what kind of customers? New customers. So you apply 3 different filters, and this is what you get in the end. So this one you can change into number of accounts, the field. It's already sorted, but if conceivably you would like to sort it even further, you would like to order it even further, then you simply go to sort, and you can sort from the largest to the smallest. In our case, nothing is going to change, they're already in the correct order. And this is the resolution of question 6. Question 7 asks for a cross tabulation, effectively a table that has columns and rows, and you look at the information in the individual cells. So this is cross tabulate the sum of deposits by branch and type of account. So that sounds quite familiar. Once again, we insert a pivot table, which is table 1. And this type, I can drag in the branch field into rows. I can drag the account type into the column. So this is our cross tabulation. And finally, we need values. So we need the amount, which by default is going to be the count of amounts. And we need to change that. You see, you can do it by the drop down menu. So summarize values, rather than count, we go to sum. And all the numbers change accordingly. So you have it by individual account type in the columns and by branch in the rows with the two grand totals. In question 8, we are effectively asked for the same information as in question 7. Cross-tabulate the sums of deposits by branch and type of account, but this time there is an extra requirement for existing customers. So once again, we have to filter the data down to existing customers. In our very familiar way, we insert a pivot table, and we can use exactly the same structure, or we can flip the X and the Y axis, if you like, the rows and the columns. So this time I'm putting the branches in the columns, and I'm putting the account type in the rows. I'm putting the amount into the values, but the additional bit is that I'm also putting the customer into the filters. So first of all, we need the sum of deposits rather than the count of deposits. So I am right clicking on any of the data in that table and change the summarization of values. Rather than by count, I change it to sum. And then I'm also filtering the customers, so we only have existing customers. And this is the subset. If you would like to show the result, summarize the values as the number of accounts, this is the result you would have. So you see how easy it is to extract quite a lot of information from a fairly large database. I mean, databases can be much larger in Excel or in other programs. We're going to have a look at more examples now with different data from a number of different files.